Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and former President Trump maintain that President Biden has the unilateral power to close down the border, and he doesn't need any of the bipartisan immigration bill that they're rejecting in the House. Is it true, or are they just gaslighting us? Yeah, they're gaslighting us. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Aronberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, aka the Florida Lawman here on the MeidasTouch Network. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has said that President Biden could just do it himself, that he doesn't need this bill, and besides, this bill is terrible. Now, of course, we'll get to that's ridiculous. The bill is actually a conservative bill, largely written by Republicans, including Senator Langford of Oklahoma, far from some left-winger. And yet the Republicans in the House don't want it because they take their marching orders from their leader, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump doesn't want anything that would help fix the border problems while President Biden is the president. Trump wants things to get as bad as possible so that he can be elected president again. But let's look at the things that they're saying and determine whether they're right or wrong under the law. Because they're saying this as if it is a fact that the law exists and it gives Biden the power just to act unilaterally. But it's really not true. First, let's see what Speaker Johnson has to say about this.
What we're saying is you have to stem the flow. The president has executive authority right now. As Congress does this negotiation and the debate and discussion, the president could stop it. Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Supreme Court has already acknowledged, gives the president broad executive authority. He could close the border literally overnight.
Donald Trump on his social media site agrees with Speaker Johnson, saying all a president has to do is say, close the border, and the border will be closed. A costly new bill is not necessary. Well, let's discuss this from a lawyer's perspective, because these politicians love to say things not expecting you to actually look up the law. Well, here's the law they're referring to. It was Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 that they cite, that gives the president the power to keep out migrants who would be, quote, detrimental to the interests of the United States, end quote. So that's what they're leaning on. But they stopped looking at that law after they got the portion they wanted to cite. There's another portion of that same law that makes the part that they're citing a near impossibility, because the same law says that people can cross into the United States and request asylum even without authorization. So the courts have interpreted that as saying that since people can cross the southern border and give themselves up and seek asylum under that same law in 1952, that the president does not have the unilateral ability to just close the border. The only way that you can effectively close the border is to change the law, like they were trying to do with this bipartisan immigration bill, a conservative bill, mind you, that would give the administration a power to close the border if certain benchmarks are reached. And the benchmarks are pretty low because thousands of people are coming across the border already. And so if they wanted to stop the flow of migrants coming across the southern border, they would want to support this bill, but they don't support this bill because it would look good for Joe Biden. See, these folks are just pretending to be policymakers when they're just self-interested politicians. They're cosplaying as members of Congress. They don't really care about the border. The border that they said was an emergency, a catastrophe, a clear and present danger.
To go to the border and see the children being abused because of these open borders. This is a humanitarian crisis. South Texas sees the thousands of children abused, sees the thousands of women sexually abused, sees the dead bodies. We saw pictures, picture after picture after picture. 853 people died last year crossing illegally into this country. And with the war that is unfolding in Israel, the risk of terrorism in the United States, I believe today, is greater than it has been at any point since 9/11. Border Patrol has sent written guidance to Border Patrol agents: be on guard for Hamas and Hezbollah seeking to enter the country and carry out the same atrocities they're carried out in Israel.
Turns out it's not that important after all if they don't want to vote for a bill that would at least solve many of their problems that they mentioned. See, Donald Trump, when he was president, tried to use that law to block migrants from entering the United States at the southern border, but the courts rejected his efforts because of the asylum section of the law that I've just cited. So Trump knows that. He tried to use it, and he couldn't. And so he knows you can't unilaterally do it without Congress. They don't want you to know that, though. They want you to forget what actually happened because it's ancient history, right? We're talking about, just a few years ago? So the other part of it is that the people in the know are speaking out. It's not just Democrats. Congressman Roy, a Republican, see what he said on the House floor.
Not going to just pass the buck and say that, oh, any president could walk in and secure the border. I saw former President Trump make that allegation earlier today on one of his social media posts. All the president has to do is declare the border is closed and it's closed. Well, with all due respect, that didn't happen in 2017, 18, 19, and 20. There were millions of people who came into the United States during those 4 years.
Congressman Roy is right. This problem has been existing for a while, including under Trump's administration, and you can't just single-handedly shut down the southern border. You need a bill from Congress. Now, Speaker Johnson also claims that President Biden has other measures that are already available to him that he's not using, such as expedited removal, mandatory and discretionary detention, and ending catch and release. But President Biden is doing all of those things already. The problem is that there's just not enough detention space. There's not enough immigration judges. There are not enough border control agents. And that would all be remedied by the legislation that's being blocked by the Republicans in the House. No, you can't make this up. Now, the only thing, to be fair, that President Biden is not doing that Trump did is to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. But Mexico has said that they're not going along with that policy anymore. So you can't lay that entirely on President Biden. Plus, that policy did not stem the flow of migrants from the southern border. It affected just a relatively small number of people. So don't get fooled by some of these arguments. This is about policy versus politics. And the only way that President Biden could close the border the way they want it to happen is through the passage of new laws, such as the one in the Senate, which even the Senate Republicans now don't want because the leader of their party, Donald Trump, said no, and their voters do, the MAGA voters do whatever Trump says. So subservience to the former president will keep Republican leadership from calling a vote in the House on this. So instead of passing this bill, what are the Republicans in the House doing to solve the problem at the border? Well, they're trying to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary, Mayorkas. And they couldn't even do that. One of the great embarrassments for any Speaker of the House in the history of the country was doing something that really was improper because Mayorkas did not commit a high crime and misdemeanor. No high crime, no misdemeanor. Just because you disagree with his policies doesn't mean you get to impeach him. And yet they couldn't even do that right.
On this vote, the yeas are 214 and the nays are 216. The resolution is not adopted.
What's covered the for you guys?
So that was real egg on their face, and the public is watching. And make no mistake, this bill that they refused to take up in the House, it's a conservative bill, written largely by Senator Langford from Oklahoma, really conservative on the border issues. And yet, because Donald Trump opposes it, the party of Trump refuses to go along. But if this bill were proposed and passed under a Trump administration, remember, the Trump administration couldn't pass any immigration bill or infrastructure bill or healthcare plan. But when it comes to immigration, they couldn't pass any bill like this. But if it did pass, they would scream it from the rooftops. I mean, the Republicans would pass this law faster than they confirmed Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, there would be a signing ceremony in the Rose Garden with a big banner, mission accomplished, and Trump would probably say that Mexico would pay for it and everything, but they would be so proud of this measure. But because it happened under Joe Biden, it's a no-go. So It's up to us to make sure they don't get away with it. And we hope that democracy prevails. That's why we're here. That's why we're watching these videos. These guys are all show and no go. So thank you for watching. I'm Dave Aronberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County, aka the Florida Lawman. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.